Welcome to Deep Look, Ultiworld's weekly radio show about the current state of Ultimate. I'm the host and the editor of Ultiworld, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me is Ultiworld senior editor Keith Raynor. And Keith, the Olympics are in full swing. It's a weird one. Have you been watching any Olympics so far?
I certainly have. I mean, the Olympics are there's a certain magic to them. I know that there's plenty of things to dislike about them. This year's certainly had its share. I find it incredibly appropriate that the American delegation is underperforming all over the place. I think it speaks to how things have been around here. Like it's very appropriate. But certainly there's some great stories and some real drama. The swimming, the women's gymnastics, and then there are so many other like ancillary sports that you find and you discover that you really enjoy watching or are fun for their narratives. I'm partial to handball. I find handball pretty fascinating to watch.
I can't stand handball. That's
oh
the one
my God,
I can't
it's
stand.
insane. It's a crazy sport.
I guess. I don't know. Feels like a bad version of basketball.
It definitely has some basketball-esque qualities, but I also watched some rugby sevens.
I like the rugby sevens.
There's some wild stuff out there.
I watched the skateboarding. Here's the thing: they got to put half pipe in the Olympics.
Yeah, I was a little surprised it wasn't in there.
I don't want to watch them like skate around in the skate park. Like, I respect that that's like a big part of the scene and the culture, but the half pipe is incredibly exciting. Like, definitely the best event at the X Games. And I'm surprised it's not in there. There's also controversy in climbing. I'm not a big climber, but I go to climbing gym probably not much lately because of COVID, but like before then, like once a month. And I've been climbing for years, and they like did some weird stuff. There's a great New York Times article about how they combined sort of more traditional climbing with speed climbing inside of like the same overall score. And like the world's greatest climber is not good at speed climbing. And so he's salty, which understandably so, because speed climbing is like this weird, it's like speed running video games. You know, it's like this weird offshoot of the actual thing. But I'm excited. I'm looking forward to watching the climbing. The surfing I found incredibly dull. I've never
found surfing to be a particularly visually impactful sport, but my wife thinks it's pretty entertaining. So like different strokes for different folks, you know what I mean? I wish, I got to say with skateboarding, I was watching some of the street skateboarding that they were doing, and there's just like, I don't know if it's because I'm a kid who grew up playing Tony Hawk video games, but like it would just be so much cooler if it were in a park and they were kind of just like, make of this space what you will, you know, rather than like, here's this prefabricated series of things that you would find in a street environment. I don't know. It just feels so fake and like there's no life in it in the way that I feel like there is to actual street skateboarding.
Other things, I've really liked the indoor volleyball more than the beach.
Oh,
really fun to watch.
I've always felt that way.
And what else has been good? I mean, I've just generally enjoyed the swimming. Good storylines this year, like crazy competition. And how about all of these, like the vaunted, like the NBC coverage is so hilariously like pro USA. They like don't even, they sometimes like try to pull the wool over your eyes that, you know, the USA competitor is about to get rocked. And then they're like, oh, they got bronze, like if it's some surprise. But
sometimes the person who wins bronze like does not get mentioned until they win the bronze. You know, right. Like they'll be talking about the head-to-head of the U.S. the favorite and the favorite from this other country, and then they're like in it, and then the U.S. finishes fourth, and somebody finishes, you know, third, and this is the first time they mentioned it.
Yeah,
it's
right.
Like, and so just got the bronze. It's like, okay.
Yeah, I know. But it does make me imagine, like, what would it be like to watch Ultimate in the Olympics? I mean, I can't get over it. Like, Ultimate Frisbee televises incredibly well. I feel like people would stumble across it just like we stumble across, you know, whatever, rugby sevens or the climbing or the surfing, and be like, wow, this is sweet, and get invested. I feel like there's...
I mean, we see people do that now, watching Ultimate on the existing television networks that we see. You know, we see
Sure.
on social media the occasional person who's like, "So I've just discovered Ultimate is televised, and like I used to love this in gym. This is so cool." Like we still see those tweets.
Yeah. And I just think like it has great potential. You know, it's a long road to get there. And we're going to talk to somebody who knows a lot about whether or not Ultimate's got a shot, because USA Ultimate CEO Tom Crawford is about to sit down with us for an interview. He just got his contract extended by the board of directors till the end of 2024. So we got a conversation with him about all kinds of different stuff. We're going to talk Olympics, COVID, future of USA Ultimate, marketing, what's going on with the semi-pro leagues and their relationship with USAU, and more. So stick around. It's Deep Look. Swag alert. Look at these new jackets. We've got these jackets from A Glimmering Wreck. Customized. We got the college drip here. Look at this. New York, NYU, Purple Haze. We got the patch on the sleeve, Keith. We got the Jimi Hendrix Statue of Liberty. I mean, this is very crispy, and it's going to be in my fall wardrobe.
Absolutely. I mean, I jerseys. I got so many jerseys. You know, I got hoodies and all that stuff. But like, here's something I can wear. Like, I feel like I can wear this out. You know, I feel like I could go out with the drip and look nice. Not even just at the fields, like after the fields, before the fields. I feel like I can look good anywhere in this. And I got this like stitched on tackle twill, so it's not like printed or sublimated or whatever like that. I got a nice quality, warm fabric.
It legitimately is something that you could wear out, like in New York City. Like I'm going to wear this out in New York City, 100%. And fully customizable, kind of like a 90s style. It's very cool. It's got the snap buttons. There it is. It's the snap. You hear that snap?
Oh yeah, I hear that snap.
And you know, you've got the Yukon grind with the blue and the silver. I've got the purple and the silver and the white and the black. And you can get a jacket just like this, but to customize just for your team. If you go to aglimmeringwreck.com, it's like a sideline jacket. And you know what? They're only $80 a pop. That's a great deal. Like if you got a jacket like this at a store somewhere, it would probably cost more than that.
Definitely. I love this style of jacket. This is perfect for me. I'm hyped to have mine. I'm hyped to wear it out. I'm like almost sad that I got to debut it on this podcast because it's going to be so fire when I wear this out.
I know. In the summertime.
Oh, yeah.
But it's the time right now. You order now, and then when you get the jackets, cooler weather starting to come around, and you roll up to regionals rocking your custom 90s jackets.
It's got to be worth a win at regionals, right? If you roll up in your whole team's rocking these, like you're gonna win at least one extra game.
I mean, NYU always got to roll in off the coach buses coming to tournaments. I assume they still do that. Which, if you come out of the coach bus and you're wearing this, you look like you're in a band. Okay, and then boom, you make it happen. So if you're interested in learning more about getting your own jacket, again, fully customizable colors, logos, everything, go to aglimmeringwreck.com. You could search AGW Ultimate as well and find out more. Joining us now on Deep Look is the CEO of USA Ultimate, Tom Crawford, who just got his contract extended, and he will continue to be leading the organization through at least the end of 2024. This literally, we just found this out like maybe an hour or two ago, and here is Tom joining us on the podcast. So first of all, hi Tom, how are you?
Good. How are you guys?
We're good. We're excited to be back filming and watching Ultimate again. It's awesome.
I know it's such a big difference from this time last year, and thank heavens, right? It's what a difference and what a great feeling. With a little bit still trepidation about what the future holds, but maybe we can talk a little bit about that.
Sure. I mean, I guess first and foremost, how's the health of USA Ultimate right now? Obviously, last year was really tough. Memberships were tough. People are starting to come back and play, although I know, I'm sure youth and college memberships are way down. How are things going from just kind of like getting back to running USA Ultimate at normal capacity?
Yeah, so we're in good shape, and it's because we had a really good plan. We anticipated that this year would be a build back year, and it's certainly going to be that. You know, Masters, biggest one we've ever had. That was a great way to get rolling with an event. People had a blast. The feedback has been spectacular. We were a little rusty, to be honest, as a team. Things were like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Like, scrambling a little bit here and there to get the rust off. But we'll be ready to go for the rest of our events. And you're right. Obviously, we're hoping that by having a fall season, that it'll give the college members and teams an opportunity to get rolling again in an exciting and fun way. If this Delta thing doesn't mess it up, I think it could actually be incredibly fun and cool to have D3, D1 together. End of the year, exams are over. Might be a little too crazy, but that'd actually be really, really fun. And then club, you see teams they're coming back. Some took a little bit longer than others, but the club teams are reforming. Rosters look great. The quality of the competition should be really good by the time we get to sectionals and into the rest of the season. So it's a build back year for sure. No doubt about it. We anticipated that. I think that'll continue to be true through the next year as well. I think we're going to have to get people excited about coming back at virtually every level, especially building back kids that have found other sports or other activities that they were busy playing Ultimate, weren't paying attention to. We got to get them excited about coming back. So we'll build back, but basically we're in good shape where we thought we would be, maybe even a little bit ahead. So we feel confident that we're in good, stable shape as an organization.
We can certainly relate to the knocking off the rust a little bit, getting back into the swing of things. And of course, I imagine that the players can as well from what we've seen from our side. But obviously it's exciting. There's a lot of exuberance around returning, but how challenging has it been to kind of get back to operations as normal in a year where things still aren't quite the same as they have been in years past?
Yeah, so we have like a mantra amongst the team, which is stay nimble, nimble, nimble. We have to stay nimble because we're having to respond to things and react to things that we haven't had to before. We are unbelievably lucky to have a phenomenal medical working group that has been advising us almost weekly on making adjustments and changes to our policies and plans. Cannot thank them enough. They have spent hundreds of hours working with us and helping us think through things. And all of those have been an adjustment, and they will continue to be going forward. So it has been challenging, but I think overall it's been like we're getting people back out playing the sport and people are having fun. That feeling kind of takes over and you don't really mind the challenges. They're different than some of the challenges we've faced in the past, but I think the team here has done an amazingly good job of staying nimble, responding, reacting, adapting. We're going to have to continue to do that with a lot of help from a lot of really smart people.
What is this? You have this year basically with no Ultimate. As you come out of this, and I know in your role you're thinking about the finances of the organization and stability and those kinds of things, but what on the Ultimate side do you start to look at and say, hey, maybe we can do this differently? Do you look at the way that the Triple Crown Tour is operating and have questions about the future of that? There have been questions about TCT for a number of years, and with the very loose kind of restrictions this year, basically no restrictions, we're seeing a lot of teams maybe opt out of competing at the TCT events. I'm wondering if there's going to be changes to that in the future, or other marketing efforts around how we build up the sport from let's say broadly a visibility context, whether that be through streaming or finding fans Do you feel like you come out of this time and say, hey, we should try something new? Or is it just go back to what we were doing and try to get back on that same trajectory?
That's a great question, Charlie. And we're actually spending a lot of time thinking and talking through that with a lot of people. I think it's a blend. I think it's a combo of both. I think it's go back to the things that people have told us that they like. We have gotten a lot of positive feedback. As I think both you guys know, we survey constantly the membership and the players and the teams, and we work through the competition working group to constantly get a feel for what the players are enjoying, what they'd like to see us change. And we make changes basically every year based on that feedback, and we will continue to do that. Sort of bigger picture, I actually do think it's, glass half full. Because of the pandemic, I think we learned some really interesting things. I think we learned that we can create a new form of play called fours that has tremendous potential, both outdoors and indoors. And I think working closely with our local organization here, Colorado Ultimate and Altitude, which, by the way, have done a phenomenal job during this COVID year. Both of those organizations have really been great partners and have tried and piloted, and they've done just a phenomenal job, including just hosting two back-to-back events and doing an amazing job. You think about fours as an example. That's something that we had talked about, but didn't spend a lot of time on. We now know that it's attractive, it's fun, players like it. Depending on how this Delta thing goes, it may be a safer way to continue keeping people playing. We actually think it has huge potential in working with youth serving organizations to introduce it indoors in gyms and in the kind of rec facilities that Parks and Rec and Boys and Girls Clubs, for example, have that you can't do with traditional Ultimate. They don't have big, huge fields to go out and play. So that's an example of where, as we come back, we got to stay super creative and take advantage of some of the things that we thought about and developed during this weird year. The relationship with the PDGA, I think that's got unbelievable potential. And I think big picture, to answer your question as best I can, I think we have to really think about us as part of disc sports. And how do we get disc sports in general, all of us, to work together, to collaborate, to be creative, to partner, so that all of us can have a successful future. And I think we're really, really open to that right now. I think we learned that by doing that, we can create some new collaborations and partnerships and playing opportunities for our members that they'll enjoy and that'll be good for all of the disc sports. And that aligns us really well with our international federation, which is definitely what they're trying to do all over the world. So I think when I think about the marketing side and all of those things you asked about, Charlie, I think about all of those things, and I see it as an opportunity that we need to take advantage
of. One of the things that jumped out to me for Ulti-World's experience, and that I'm seeing also reflected across various organizations within Ultimate and even beyond, is that through this time where things may have been slower in some ways, there was a lot of time for internal reflection, particularly with what was going on in the world in relation to racial and social justice, through equity movements. That kind of reexamination of both, how we are doing things, how we're structuring things, what our goals are, created some new incentives and new ideas coming out of this. However, obviously everyone also faced some financial challenges. So it's kind of a resource management game. There's new changes you want to make, but how do you invest your resources into making them? So this all kind of gets me to the question here, which is, what kind of new discoveries or reexaminations happened within USA Ultimate, and how do you prioritize where the resources go, given that there's a little bit of a constraint potentially on them from this pandemic?
Yeah, thanks, Keith. Good question. I think a lot of reflection for individuals as well as us as an organization, for sure. I think we are going to be resource challenged for at least another couple of years as we build back. No question about that. We have to be really careful with our resources. I think we are extremely committed to our EDI work. We actually made a lot of progress. We actually probably focused on it way more than we otherwise would have been able to because of the pandemic, and have built a really strong foundation to now build on to do some really meaningful work. And that is definitely going to be part of our plan. Is we want to now take advantage of this foundation that we have built, and we still have work to do. There's no doubt about it. And we do that every week and every month. But there's no doubt that we are really committed to becoming a more diverse and inclusive community of players. And I think you'll see some really interesting strategies, particularly at the youth level, that will start to take hold next year and the year after, where there's more and more seeding of programs at the local level. We really want to rely on our local partners to make this stuff happen and see ourselves as a source of funding, best practices, and that sort of thing to stimulate that and catalyze that across the country. And I don't think I know we're entirely committed to that. And we feel like we've done some really strong work to get us in a great position to do it. So I'm actually personally really looking forward to that. And I think that we will have some really cool stories to tell. It will not be easy. We'll learn along the way. It will require some resources. We are definitely committed to applying resources in that way. And I'm personally really fired up to see what kind of progress we can make.
Well, you've mentioned Delta variant and COVID a couple times already here. So I just want to kind of tackle that for a second and say, are there, do you have concerns that we could see, new restrictions on competition given, what we're seeing, at least as a problem for those who are unvaccinated with the spread of the Delta variant?
Yes, I do. I talked to a bunch of my colleagues. I think we as a community are in really good shape. I'll just give you an example. So at Masters, over 95% of the participants were fully vaccinated, which I think relative to other sports is a phenomenal number. We'll see how that holds up at US Open. But I think as a community, especially if we could tell that story to local organizers and commissions and states, they'll feel very safe about hosting our events and having us, come into town, if you will. But I think if this thing takes off and is really bad over the next couple of months, could we see some municipalities, cities, states pull back a little bit in terms of their willingness to host events, have people from outside of the state coming in? Maybe. Out of our control. We'll have to see how it goes. What I'm hearing is there's some concern about the breakthrough. So even fully vaccinated people getting infected and passing that along to others without knowing it, and how do you control that? So we're paying a lot of attention to it. And again, this is where our medical working group is going to be giving us a lot of advice. I think as a sport, we're in way better shape than a lot of other sports. We're outdoors. We have some good policies in place. We're giving people a lot of good options. So I think we're in a pretty good place right now, but I think we'd be crazy not to be paying close attention and, again, be ready to be nimble where we have to be.
Another thing that you mentioned a couple of times here, Tom, is talking about growing youth ultimate, in some ways regrowing it, re-energizing, refilling that pipeline of young new players being introduced to the sport. And you mentioned even doing having an equity lens when going through that process. What does it look like? How do you go through the process of getting people excited about learning about and being introduced to Ultimate again?
I think it happens two ways, Keith. One is, we now will finally have some content to use to start putting some quality content out that shows what a fun, cool sport Ultimate is. We haven't had that for 18 months or more, perhaps. So that's one thing, is finally just having stories to tell and content to attract people and turn them on to the sport. But mostly at the youth level, it's local. It's supporting and empowering and helping our local organizations create programs that are attractive to the local youth scene, where parents are making a decision to give the sport a try, because that's what happens at the youth level. A lot of it is also bringing your friends. So if we can get one, you can get three, as they go back and drag two of their friends along. So I think it's a lot of effort to help the local organizations create programming that attracts kids. This is why I love to highlight Colorado. Colorado Springs is sending 2 teams to YCC, 2 youth teams for the first time. And I think if you asked anybody here, youth in Colorado Springs was just dead as a doornail as short as 2 years ago. So they used the COVID year to actually build up the interest and get teams put together. And I think that's an example of where at the local level that's where the action is. And I see our job as, how do we support and help that and make that happen through allocation of resources, through grants, through just the kind of support that we already provide. And then when it comes to the diversity and equity and inclusive part, it's helping our local organizations understand how to reach out into new communities, more urban perhaps, partner with local youth serving organizations that already have those kids in their pipelines and in their programs, and offer opportunities for them to participate in the sport for the first time, making sure that then there is a vehicle and a way for those kids to continue. And it's not just a one-off experience, because we don't want to do that. We don't want to show kids what they can't have. We want to show them what they can have. And I think we're really lucky to have a sport that is relatively inexpensive, particularly at the local level, without travel, on some of the other expenses that can add up. It's a pretty inexpensive sport to play. And I think if we can develop grant programs and build up our foundation where we can be really stimulating and supporting those programs, that's the way we'll see youth grow. Build back first and then grow is really going to happen at that local level. That's also where it's safe to play, right? Because you're not traveling.
Sure.
So even with some of the challenges we're going to face, perhaps it'll still be safe for kids to be playing the sport. And parents are dying for their kids to be outside, being active, being healthy.
Yeah, no question. You also talked about wanting to see Ultimate and USA Ultimate as a part of the disc sports universe. And I love to hear that. I mean, as somebody who's now been pretty heavily involved in disc golf for over 5 years, I think that there's a lot that the sports can get from each other. But I will say, one of the things that stands out to me is that we don't even have a lot of unity within Ultimate right now, let alone trying to get it partnered up and working more closely with disc golf. We have semi-professional leagues. Obviously, the AUDL is in more than halfway through its season at this point. PUL has weekends coming up very soon. Western Ultimate League has a showcase game this weekend, and then they're going to be doing some stuff later this year. And yet we're not really seeing a lot of involvement, if any, from USA Ultimate, even in terms of just like promoting these events. This seems like the kind of thing that's a missed opportunity in the marketing side. I'm editorializing here, and I know that, but I'm surprised at how little integration there has been on this front. Is that something we could see change?
Yes, we have to. I think we have to. And I think the quick answer is yes. I think the more we all work together, cooperate, collaborate, partner, that I forget the old expression about, all of the ships rise together, or whatever the heck it is. But I actually think that's what we have to do. I think that, COVID was a hit. There's no doubt. We lost momentum and we lost members, and we have to figure out a way for all of us to work together and collaborate and promote each other and help each other in order for disc sports. And that's the way I'm starting to think about it a lot, Charlie, is not just USA Ultimate, but we're a leadership organization. We're lucky to have a lot of visibility. both domestically and in the international community. I think we can set an example. And by working together with WIFDF and a lot of these things, I think we can really be helpful. But I agree with you, and I think it's important for disc sports to come together and collaborate and grow back together. And personally, if you think about kids, which I am really passionate about, I'm just as excited to see a kid throwing a disc into a net or some other target as I am chucking it the length of the field. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be both. And actually, I think if it's both, it's more fun for the kids. So I agree with you. I think you will see that. I really do think you'll see that. We're in a lot of conversations with our board right now about how we make that happen. We had a very active discussion with them just a couple of weeks ago about this. And I think it's time for more collaboration, more cooperation, more working together. And it's going to be really good for all of us if we do that.
That's very, very exciting to hear. I know it's something that a lot of people have talked about, seeing that synergy between USA Ultimate and some of the other existing purveyors of Ultimate within our group. But another partner that you mentioned is the World Flying Disc Federation, and I know there's been a lot of movement with them and partnership with them to bring Ultimate closer to a potential Olympic dream, as it were. The Summer Olympics are taking place right now. It's certainly got a lot of attention. Do you still feel like there is an Olympic goal for Ultimate? And if so, what does that timeline look like for you now?
Yes. So that is an important goal that WIFDF definitely has set, and they are pursuing it. I do have a little bit of insight into kind of what's going on. Happy to share. So while COVID has affected all of us financially, I'm sure Ultiworld as much as anybody else, right? It was a very difficult time. And we're all trying to grow our way back out of this to get healthy again. That's also true with the Olympic movement. If you've been following the news, you may have seen that both the USOPC and the IOC, for the very first time in their history, have both taken out brand new credit facilities. Again, first time in their history that they've had to do it, to the tune of 50 million and more in order to survive, in order to be able to continue to do their work. So they have taken major financial hits, as all of us have. And I think as a result of that, their strategy and thinking around the Olympic Games is going to be impacted by that. And so everything is a little bit in flux right now when it comes to the IOC and the upcoming games. They're watching very closely to see if, how things go in Tokyo. A few things. One, obviously you would never want to run a games the way this games is being run. And believe me, I have a ton of insight into what's going on there because I happen to have the most important person in my life is basically running the games for the United States. So it is wicked complicated and really tough. But they're going to pay a lot of attention to things like how many people watch skateboarding, how many people watch climbing, how does surfing do? Surfing, the typhoon that was rolling through was phenomenal for surfing because of the waves, which is always the challenge for that sport. So they got great waves. They had a great competition. And I think there's been a really positive response to that sport. So the IOC and the local organizing committees, they're going to really be paying close attention to social media traction, viewership on NBC. Are the young viewers getting drawn back into the games? And they're going to base their decisions on a lot of those factors, including their own financial situation. So with that as a backdrop, do we still think that Ultimate has an opportunity? Yes. Here's what I would say. I would say that if a team sport has an opportunity, we're in a really strong position. The challenge, as you know, with a team sport is roster size, beds in the village, cost, all of those factors hitting that 10,500 cap that looks like it's going to be hardened by the IOC after Paris. All of those factors are things that NOB and WFDF and VOCR are paying an awful lot of attention to. Our job, I think, is to be a good partner because it's LA and we're the national governing body for the US. And then I am, lucky to be in a position to have a lot of friendships and contacts that can take advantage of to pay close attention to and monitor it. Where we personally, we as USA Ultimate, we really don't have to expend any resources on this. This is really all based on personal relationships and knowing people and being able to keep track of what's happening. But in terms of resource allocation, USA Ultimate doesn't spend anything on this, just some of my time.
Quick follow-up, actually, Charlie, just before you move on from this topic. I know you mentioned some of the other newer sports that maybe are really attractive to young viewers. Do you feel like it's better to see those sports performing well with young viewers? Like that might indicate to the IOC that they should be trying to find other new sports that reach this group? Or is it more of a problem for those sports to perform well because they may remain in the program and that not open up more space for a sport like Ultimate?
Very insightful question. I mean, it's like
you're one of the few people who might know the answer.
It's really good if they do well. Maybe if one or two of them could not do quite as well. But I think it does reinforce to the IOC that, it is a good way to attract younger viewers and younger fans and keep the Olympic Games relevant to, not just 50 plus, but also the 12, 13, even 8, 9, 10-year-olds. And some of these young athletes, skateboarding, surfing, and they're going to be really cool stories. They already are. And kids are going to pay attention to those stories. They're going to get a following. And I think we as a sport have a chance to do the same thing if we can work our way in, because we'll have some very cool stories and we will attract the same kind of fans. I think I'm highly confident of that. And I think there's already been a couple of cool stories out there about how Ultimate in LA, not coming from us, just coming organically out of the press and out of people that are paying attention to this, how Ultimate would be a cool addition. And what a lot of people don't know that's a big advantage for us is we are authentically mixed gender and equitable. Like, we don't have to make this up. We have been for a really long time at the highest levels. And so it's got a genuineness and an authenticity to it that I think helps. And I think also the fact that our international federation has done a phenomenal job growing the sport internationally puts us way ahead of some of the other potential team sports when it comes to our breadth of international participation. So all of those things are kind of in our favor, but I think it's really, really hard to predict right now what's going to happen given the financial constraints that the Olympic movement as a whole is under right now.
One last Olympics question. The athlete cap and the size of teams in Ultimate has long been a potential stumbling block. Does this increase the odds that there's an attempt to move to a smaller sided format, whether that be beach where you can play fours, you were talking about Ultimate Fours already as a grass or court option. Could we see that as the way that Ultimate gets in? Is that something that's being pursued?
I think there's a chance that could be, if that's the way to kind of get our foot in the door. That's really a WFDF strategy, and that's where we are really lucky to have VOCR and NOB really tuned into what's going on. And then I have a few relationships with very high-level strategic people that work a lot with the IOC where we can kind of monitor that as well. But I think there's a chance that is what the strategy would have to be. And I think if that is, the strategy is foot in the door, got to give people an opportunity to see it, feel it, and then things can change very quickly because, until they get that opportunity, they don't really understand still, a lot of people, like what we're really talking about. And then when they see it, so far at the IOC level, when they have come out to World Games or other experiences that we've invited them to, they have been very happy with what they see. And again, this is where you got to be able to be entertaining. So what the AUDL is doing is really important. Our content on ESPN for the past decade has proven that it can be highly entertaining on commercial TV. That's important to the IOC because a huge source of their revenue is the television revenue. So if we hadn't already proven that, that would be a huge challenge. So a lot of the things we've done to help grow the sport in general and to grow the appeal of the sport have also helped us strategically with the way we're perceived at that level.
All right. So I know we've already taken up a bunch of your time, so I'll just follow up with one or two more things here. I'm checking out some of the questions from some of our subscribers. I know one thing. Strategic plan. You're going to be leading a new updated strategic plan. What's the timeline on that, and how are you going to be getting feedback from the community this time around about the things that are important to your members?
It'll, just like in the past, it'll probably be a variety of ways. We haven't settled on that yet. We're still talking about that. I think one of the things that we could do to reflect back on earlier questions in our discussion is maybe include other groups that we haven't included in the past in this strategic planning process. So, talk to the AUDL and PUL and the PDGA and, maybe some youth serving organizations that have never really been part of the strategic planning process, so that and then all of our members, of course, will have multiple ways for them to get involved and provide input. But I think the more we can maybe broaden the number of people that we talk to in this idea of greater collaboration, greater partnership, working as a family, giving them an opportunity to feed into and provide input into the strategic plan, I think we could maybe improve even the way we've done it in the past. But there'll be multiple ways still to be determined for that.
Got it.
One of the other questions that we had, and I'll kind of paraphrase, was about monetization in Club Ultimate and professionalization of Club Ultimate. But I kind of want to expand on that a little bit. And you mentioned the resource constraints that not only USA Ultimate but other Ultimate organizations are under. What do we need to do to bring in money outside of membership fees and whatnot to Ultimate? What needs to happen for us to see that kind of outside capital invested in our sport?
We have to grow back to where we're bigger than we are right now, because, for example, sponsors, basically, I think people forget sometimes, sponsors are not foundations. They're not charitable donors. They will make decisions based on return on investment, and that is it. So unless we can show them a compelling case for a good return on investment, sponsors will not come in. And Keith, I'm assuming that's the kind of capital you're talking about. So one of the ways is to have a big enough membership base where a sponsor feels like the exposure that they get is will give them a worthwhile return on their investment. Having the opportunities on ESPN is helpful because we have commercial inventory that we can offer that sometimes can be appealing to some of the potential sponsors. We're talking to a few right now, but I think it's such a crowded landscape of sports that are appealing to a limited number of dollars, that when you're as small as we are, it's a very tough sell. Just to be really candid, it's a very tough sell because it's hard for them to run any formulas and see a return on investment that is appealing to them. Now, if you think about what we said or talked about earlier, imagine if we pooled all of the resources of this sports together and could figure out a way to together be appealing to outside capital in a variety of ways. Sponsors is just one. Bigger events, bigger multi-sport, multi-disc sport events, that sort of stuff. Then you can start to become a little bit more attractive from a return on investment perspective. And I think we have some opportunities to do that going forward.
I'm curious for your thoughts on the fact that you can now, in some states, gamble on Ultimate Frisbee. The AUDL is now being listed in some states. DraftKings.
DraftKings, yeah.
Do you see this as positive, negative, neutral?
Strictly from a potential capital money perspective, it's positive.
Sure.
Personal philosophical perspective, having been involved in a bunch of different sports that have been tainted by gambling, I have some philosophical, challenges that I would have to overcome personally to feel like really excited about it, because I'm familiar in other sports where athletes get tempted and make really bad decisions, and they're athletes that are struggling, right? That are struggling financially and trying to hang on and trying to figure out how to make it, and then they get tempted and make really bad decisions, and that's what gambling introduces to a sport. But purely from a potential revenue, capital, etc., it's going to happen, right? It's part of sports now. So,
got it. All right. Well, as you look ahead to the rest of the year, what are you looking for in terms of, whether that's revenue targets, membership targets, just having events happen? Like what's on your mind as you look to the rest of 2021?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. One is, we have a phenomenal team that really gets an amazing amount of stuff done. It was a rough year, so trying to keep as much of that team together as we can, adding some new talent like we just described in our announcement today. Want to build that team back up to where it was, because people are really stretched thin right now. And so I want to pay a lot of attention to that. Want to get our events that we have planned to run and run well. And if we can get them all to run, that's going to make a huge difference on how we enter next year. So obviously hoping that this new variant doesn't, get any localities or municipalities to start locking down again, so we can run the events that we have in our calendar right now. If we can do that successfully, we'll enter next year in really good shape and be able to really come roaring back the way we want to. So I think it's keep the team intact, build it out so our competence and ability to get quality work done is there. Keep adding to the incredibly talented volunteers that help us really support the local organizations so that they can start to do the really important local work, particularly with youth, that is going to help us grow the sport. Build our foundation back up to where we actually have some new resources flowing in to feed a lot of these equity, diversity, inclusion programs that we want to start funding at a higher level. I guess I could just keep going, Charlie, like this that I want to do. I'm just happy that we're back talking about events in the sport and people running around playing and having fun. Again, just compare this to a year ago. And we got to feel good about that. We got to stay positive about that while we stay nimble and drive back as hard and fast as we can.
All right. Well, Tom, thank you so much for taking the time with us. And again, maybe I should follow up with one last thing. You just got your contract extended through 2024. Big picture, do you see yourself staying on beyond that? And what are you hoping to get done in this time? I mean, we'll still be 4 years away from potential LA 2028 Olympics at that point. So what's like the goals that you have in mind for, at least this next 3 years?
I would say quickly everything that I just said, all of those things. For me, Charlie, to be really honest, I need some more time for my family. So I think 2024 is it for me in terms of a full-time commitment to Ultimate. I have 3 grandkids whom I do not get nearly enough time with. And I want more time, as does my wife, with our grandkids and our kids and our family. So in my conversations with the board, that's it. That's going to be it for me from a full-time commitment. And so I want to get a lot done because I've been doing this for a long time. I love the sport. I love the organization. I want to get a lot done in the next few years. If by some incredibly lucky chance we get on the Olympic program, I'll definitely want to help make sure that goes really well. And I will be able to help a tremendous amount with that, but that will not be in any kind of a full-time role at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Has you considered leaving at the end of your contract this year?
I mean, I'm like everybody. You consider all kinds of things. And my wife, COVID, as Keith mentioned earlier, COVID was a year of reflection for all of us. And so, yeah, for sure. I mean, I just like every other human being, you think about, do I want to retire? Do I want to find something else? Do I want to move so that I can be closer to my grandkids? Do I want to, respond to some of the recruiting that am faced with on a pretty regular basis? You start thinking about all of those things. I kept coming back to the progress that we've made. I felt really bad about the hit that we took due to COVID. And I really want to help us not only get back to where we were, but start to achieve some of the things that we were dreaming about and driving toward. And I think we can. I'm optimistic. And I don't think it's going to be easy, but I think we can. And I just couldn't get away from wanting to make that happen. Like I kind of obsessed now that I really want to try to make that happen. And I think that the cooperative, collaborative, partner, strategic approach that I think we can take, I can be super helpful with. And I have a lot of skills in those areas. So I think I can be really helpful to the organization. And so I want to just press ahead with all of that and then use the final year to a year and a half to really prepare the organization for the next stage. And so that's baked into the plan that I have with the board right now. That's what we'll be doing.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much, Tom. Appreciate your time.
And by then, I want Ultiworld to be incredibly successful, incredibly profitable, to have a staff of 30 and to be rocking and rolling.
A staff of 30, I can only dream. That would make us bigger than USA Ultimate. I don't see that happening anytime soon. But thank you, Tom.
Okay. No, I mean it. We all got to be in this together and make it happen, and we can. Let's go for it.
Tom Crawford, CEO of USA Ultimate, with us here on Deep Look. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Deep Look. Thanks again to Tom for stopping by. Keith, this was a very interesting interview. I mean, I think I've talked to Tom Crawford, in an interview setting like this, I don't know, 10 times over the last few years. And, at other times, I have never heard this level of we all need to work together that we heard from him today.
I agree that was the most surprising takeaway I feel like I had from that conversation. I did not necessarily expect USAU essentially to approach this conversation and say like, hey, let's knock down the barriers and figure out what we can do to, cross promote and work together. But it's something that I think a lot of people have pushed for a long time, is to, find the common ground, of which there's clearly a lot between USA Ultimate and the semi-pro leagues. And even if their visions of exactly the right path to walk to Ultimate walk Ultimate to popularity, if that's exact paths are slightly different, like mostly they overlap a bunch, and we should figure out how to pull that off together.
I couldn't be more heartened. I mean, obviously talk is not action, but this to me is like such an incredibly important part of, I think, how we can get the sport to have a resurgence post pandemic here and feel like things are coming together. And I don't know, like, I know there's a lot of people who feel strongly, you know, they're anti-AUDL or, you know, they feel like USA Ultimate should never work with an organization that has referees or whatever the issues may be. And I think that those things are probably still going to be stumbling blocks to some extent. But the idea that there can be no cooperation whatsoever has never made any sense to me. And I think that there's more in common than people realize. And I think in some ways I feel like, you know, somebody gets a bad taste in their mouth about an organization or a person that works in the organization, and it like causes a rift that then like seems to persist for a long time. Like you think about the early years of the AUDL and the MLU. Remember how toxic MLU folks were being towards USA Ultimate? I mean, like that set the groundwork for like basically 7 years of total non-cooperation.
It's like when you play a game against a team and there's one person on the team who makes horrible calls. And so
right,
as you talk about your experience with that team, all you talk about is the person who make horrible calls, and everybody else on your team who maybe joins the team next year, they're like, oh, that's the team that makes horrible calls. Like that kind of building on itself. This is just a bigger version of that.
Right. And, you know, who knows what goes on behind the closed doors and in private conversations. But I don't know. I just find it very encouraging to hear that. Because to me, it's always been surprising, you know, USA Ultimate has not very much promoted like the Premier Ultimate League, which feels like it's doing exactly the kinds of things that USA Ultimate would want to see. They're using observers. They're using USAU rules with very slight modifications. They are a women's focused league. Like these are the things that USAU is talking about as being important. And then you never see them promoting on social media or anything that stuff is happening. It's just never made any sense whatsoever. So I am very hopeful that this becomes a new era where we can find ways to work together. I mean, I think that, you know, look, Tom Crawford's a really smart guy. Okay. The fact that he is getting another 3 years and that the board re-upped him again shows you how much respect there is from the like board of directors side and from the staff about his leadership and like getting through COVID. And, you know, I thought it was interesting, like talking about the Olympics today. I mean, Tom Crawford used to be like incredibly focused on Olympics as this like key thing. And not that he's not anymore, but that was a different tone around the Olympics as well. It was more about we need to build our community from the ground up. We need to invest in our local communities and provide resources to them. We need to work together. Like where has this been? This is what I am talking about, right? This is the kind of stuff that I think is actually going to make a difference in terms of growth of the sport. And I just find it very refreshing and exciting.
And to me, it makes sense given the events and the feedback of the past, 5 years or whatnot. How long have we been on the current strategic plan? We had this whole conversation about visibility, and is this really the number one priority of our community, and should it be based on the previous strategic plan? And, it feels like that's de-emphasized here. And I feel like that's been the feedback from the community. It's like, hey, we need to stop focusing on this top-down model of let's make the highest level of Ultimate incredibly popular, and then let that trickle down through the community as it'll increase growth at the local level. Like, yes, some of those elements still exist, but it sounds like that's secondary to how can we work with local communities to grow their youth level, like with their youth
right.
communities. Like how can we seed that stuff so that we see the long-term growth, which is a very different approach. Obviously, they're going to approach it from both sides of the issue, and that's totally reasonable. I wouldn't expect otherwise, but one is going to be prioritized over the other. And it sounds like that priority has shifted.
Well, and it's not just about, getting the feedback from people saying, oh, we don't care about visibility. It's also from the feedback you get from the numbers.
Yep.
Like if you're not seeing youth numbers growing at a fast clip, which they frankly haven't been growing at a super fast clip the last couple of years, then you got to say, okay, well, what's going wrong? What aren't we doing? And, he gives the example about Colorado Springs and the fact that they're sending 2 teams to YCCs this year. And like, guaranteed that has nothing to do with, Ultimate being on ESPN. I mean, that's not why now there's a youth program starting to grow in Colorado Springs. It's because somebody's on the ground doing that work. And that's what has to happen all across the country and the world if we want this kind of stuff to happen. So anyway, I just thought it was one of the better interviews we've done with Tom Crawford.
Certainly from a standpoint of like, did we hear exactly what we expected? It was not exactly what I expected. So on that front, Tom brought some heat.
Very interesting. Well, let us know your thoughts. Hit us up, deeplook@ultiworld.com. Want to know what you're thinking, what you're hearing from Tom. And of course, you can hit us up in the Discord if you are an Ultiworld Full or Plus subscriber. All right, Fury dropped their roster, Keith. Kaboom. San Francisco Fury, a lot of rumors at the beginning of the season that they weren't even going to play. Those were basically unfounded. The team thought that there wasn't going to be a season, and then there was a season, and they've been taking their time, and then now we get the roster, and like, oh, hello, San Francisco Fury. Keith, is this year's team going to be better than the team we saw in 2019?
On paper, yes. It's just so Fury to somehow get better after all this. We were questioning what was their roster going to look like. Like, like you said, there were thoughts that they may not even compete this season. We thought that we may see a redistribution of the talent of women matching players from Fury into other teams in the area. It doesn't look like that's happening because there are 4 departures from this team, one of whom is a practice player, and none of them are like core key contributors. We're not talking about anybody who was really in the running for all club or anything last year. And instead they turned around and added top end talent. I mean, it's shocking. And to me, it may need to necessitate them being number 1 in the power rankings, to be honest.
So let's just go through it. I mean, obviously you have the players that we've seen be high impact for them for many years. And, Anna Nazarov, Carolyn Finney, Claire Desmond, Cree Howard. I mean, there's obviously a great amount of continuity when you're talking about a team that only has 4 departures. I mean, this is the least turnover that we've seen from any team that's released a roster.
Opie Payne, who when you spoke to her, it sounded like she may not be competing this year.
I have to say, I heard a rumor that perhaps she is only going to be competing in a limited capacity or not that much, but will be eligible for World Games tryouts by being on a roster. So we'll have to see about that, because you're right. She did say that in sideline talk. But here's your new players. Anna Thompson.
Pretty good.
Yes, that Anna Thompson. Dina Elimelech.
She's all right.
Lisa Cooper.
Coming back.
Shayla Harris.
Yes, she's good too.
Unbelievable. I mean, okay, so Anna Thompson, you could put her on O or D, but like is an elite handler in the women's game day one. Shayla Harris, incredible defender in college, and I think has the ability to step up into an even bigger role now on Fury, where, you just get to be a role player. Like, go out there, get Ds, and be a good cutter that doesn't turn it over. Then, Dina Elimelech is, I mean, I'm excited to see what she looks like on a super elite team. Wildfire was a good team. This is obviously a blow to San Diego, and there's still questions about, Wildfire and whether they're going to compete this year. But she's going to be, I think, she could be a superstar cutter for this team. So you take the team that already existed, that was clearly the number 2 team in the country last year behind Brute. You add in these pieces, and it makes you start to wonder, like, maybe this team wins the championship this year.
Understandably. I mean, I know that in the past and maybe in the future, Fury has had a curious ability to distribute the impact and production of their players, and that's kept some of them off of awards podiums, for example. But, I could see Anna Thompson or Dina Elimelech being on an all-club team. To add 2 players like that, is remarkable, especially when that's coupled with the fact that you lost almost nobody. It's, we've had these conversations about Fury before, and this is true for Brute Squad too. And at some points it's been true for Riot and Molly Brown when we were talking about the Big Four. Every time they recruit, the people they bring in are we're not talking about, this is a good college player who like has some time to develop. It's people who've been already successful at the elite club level. And that's as true as it has ever been. It's true right now for this Fury team. This is a very impressive roster.
I mean, let's for some perspective. 2019 College Player of the Year, Dina Elamelek. 2019 Club Player of the Year in the mixed division, Anna Thompson. Welcome to Fury.
So it should be a pretty easy transition, I'm saying, for them.
They're not the only team to drop a roster this week. We also saw Pittsburgh Parcha, a new team. Pittsburgh, there's been long rumors about the sort of reemergence of an elite Pittsburgh team. Carolyn Normile leaving Scandal to help start this. And now we get the roster. And it looks good. I think this team looks like the favorite right now to win in the Mid-Atlantic, Keith, especially with Scandal out of the mix this year. And, lots of Pittsburgh names that we know. Carolyn Normile is indeed a captain. And I think the big name that would come as a surprise, perhaps, is Erica Bacon, formerly of Dragon Thrust, who moved to Pittsburgh and is going to be playing for Parcha this year. They look like they have, I don't think this is like a club semis team or anything like that, but they're good. I could see them making quarters.
I can as well. I would be much cooler on this roster in like a traditional year. We're missing a couple teams.
If Scandal was playing, I think you probably wouldn't even pick them to go to nationals.
Right. I'm excited because it's a new team from a city that we know has had talent. And it'll be exciting to watch them play. Getting to see Carolyn Normile in like a really starring role potentially is an exciting proposition. There's definitely talent on this team, some elite club experience. It'll be interesting to see it come together as well. It's not always easy putting together a first year team, but we've seen some go on to be pretty successful. So, in this landscape, I think they're in a not just potentially a favorable position to be at quarterfinals. They have more talent than a lot of the other teams that they might be competing against.
Right. Well, let's take a look around the club division from what happened this past weekend on the field, not just on the internet. Select Flight Invite East happened out in Ohio, and we had men's and mixed at the tournament. In the mixed division, Cleveland Crocs, a brand new team, getting the win over the regional competition. They were able to beat Hybrid in the final. They also beat Cocktails and Steamboat. They did lose to Nashville Shine during pool play, but an interesting weekend out there in the mixed division. Crocs, maybe a team that we could see qualify out of the Great Lakes this year. And in the little round robin, staying in the mixed division, AMP goes undefeated, playing some other local teams. They beat Space Heater 12-10. Basically, the first time Space Heaters suited up and played together. Some players meeting for the first time, showing up for the little round robin. And Rally played pretty darn well. And they end up in the top 25 this week after their performance. So AMP still at the top of the heap, but a close early game against that's the number 1 and number 2 teams in the country right now. 12-10. AMP playing without Sean Mott, and the rumor that he won't be playing with them. Does that downgrade AMP in your mind, Keith?
How can it not? When we did I was going back through our club top 25s because I'm a huge nerd. We've already gone over the fact that I enjoy like player evaluation stuff. I was going back through it and reliving the joy, and I'm excited to do it again when the time comes in 2021, or even if I have to wait till 2022. But Sean Mott was one of the top 4 male matching players in the mixed division. Like, I'm pretty sure if memory serves, he was at least top 5, but I'm pretty sure he was top 4 with Khalif El Salam, Tanner Johnson, and Michael Ling. So how can that not be a downgrade? He is so critical to AMP's success, or has been in the past. So, maybe they were replacing his production with another player. That's certainly possible. But this has been one of the most impactful players on AMP for years now, and one of the most impactful players in the division.
And you're just seeing people pop up in other places. Anna Thompson's out in San Francisco now. Saw Michael Ing in the background of a picture from a revolver practice.
That's where we're at now.
That's the spice right there. So, what's AMP going to look like? I mean, they're still going to be a really good team. We know this, but they're losing some of the players that have really driven them the last couple of years to 2 straight titles. And obviously, I think it's a good sign to get an early win over Space Heater, but Space Heater hasn't really played much yet. How are things going to look when we get to, regionals and beyond? It's going to be fun to find out. Over in the men's division, Mad Men out of Madison really got rolling, pretty much beat everybody handily. Tennessee Tenacity made the final, but couldn't really come that close to Mad Men in that game. Out in another round robin in the Mid-Atlantic, DC Truck Stop, Temper, Vault, and Phantom playing. Truck Stop and Temper split games in, sort of mutual blowouts. Strange. 12-7 for Truck, and then in the next day it was 13-6 for Temper. Make of that what you will. There were no obvious changes to the rosters or the weather that would be significant. Sounds like just each team played well on one day and not well the other day. Vault split with Temper in their pair of games. Phantom went undefeated. And they're
winless.
That's yes. They went fully defeated.
They went defeated.
Is what I was going for. There was no feeding happening. And there's buzz that there's going to be a Philadelphia Phoenix AUDL associated club team that includes Sean Mott that will be competing in club this fall. So this is interesting. This is the second city that we've heard about this from. The Raleigh Flyers are also apparently going to have kind of like a farm team, club team. Now, most of the players on the Flyers are going to be playing for Ring of Fire, which of course is the Blue Blood program out of Raleigh. But now we have this second Flyers club team. Interesting to see, are we going to see more AUDL teams taking this approach? And could that Philadelphia team actually be the best men's team in Philly? Is that possible?
Maybe Phantom's getting feeded, so there's room. But the Raleigh scene has always been really well aligned. There's never been much friction, it seems like, between the Flyers and the men's club scene there. So it's always been something that has worked really well for them. That's not always been the case in every other city. You see some pretty big differences between the nearest elite club team and the rosters of their local AUDL team. You look at Seattle, for example. But in other places, it's pretty much the same, like Chicago. So we haven't even really gotten a sense of how helpful it is versus how challenging it is to have your roster competing in both the AUDL and the club circuit almost overlapping. So I'm not even confident that necessarily is portends well for a specific area. But, Philly, for teams that have that alignment already, I don't see why they can't try and build a farm system. I mean, heck, everybody's basically, I think, trying to copy what Raleigh's doing. We know that the Triangle feels like it's one of the most burgeoning hubs in Ultimate. So I don't see why other smaller Ultimate locations might not try and approach things the same way.
Right. Well,
Philly's always had this kind of developmental vibe going on.
Strange, though, that they haven't been able to pull together a men's. Really, they haven't had a good men's or women's team in quite some time. Maybe that's just because of how successful AMP has been. That's just pulling the top players, and then that sort of leaves the other teams looking a little bit weaker around the edges, and you end up, borderline people who live in New Jersey, for example, maybe end up going to New York to play. Or people drive down to DC to play. We've seen that. So interesting. We'll see what comes of it. Let's turn our attention quickly to the AUDL. We'll remind you that we have a podcast all about the AUDL, Stall 7, and you should check it out. Brian Jones on every week to talk about things from the coach's corner, and Alex Rubin and Chris McGlynn break it all down. We're going to keep it brief this week. How about Ottawa coming out and going 2-0, Keith, and being part of the reason our picks were just garbage last week?
I mean, you get Nick Boucher, turns out to be a gift from the ultimate gods. Shows up and throws for like 7 million yards in 2 games. So what do I know? I don't know what to do with this. This was one of the worst teams in the AUDL for like 2 years in a row, and now they're the greatest team that's ever played the game. I mean,
it makes me worried about Toronto.
A little bit.
They are falling off the map. I mean, they haven't played that well in the club division lately. Goat's been down. To go in and get kind of blasted by Ottawa, like yikes, what's going on? But credit to Ottawa, they played good. They went and beat Montreal the next day too. So impressive start to the Canada Cup for Nick Boucher, who, by the way, put up the biggest edge score of the season with his 1,000 yards of throwing or whatever.
Really, video game numbers. I mean, we don't have an ultimate video game, but if there was one, this is what the numbers.
There was just no defense played in that game.
Can I also just take a moment to remark something that I did in our Discord as well? Just
sure.
Shout out to the person on Ottawa whose last name is Too Good. Like literally the words "too" T-O-O and "good" put together. Too Good. I mean, is this the greatest name in Ultimate?
It's a dream commentary situation. He runs it down and lays out.
A huge
Too
trap.
Good.
It's also a huge trap,
else.
Right?
Yeah. Too Good drops it.
Oh no.
It's a incredible Ultimate Frisbee name.
Shout out to Reese Too Good.
So elsewhere, I mean, let's talk about the big game, Keith. Atlanta, New York, maybe the game of the year.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Indy, Detroit, but okay. Yeah, let's talk Atlanta, New York, I guess. They're all
Atlanta, New York. Atlanta gets a 1-point win over New York, avoids basically, Kelvin Williams breaks it up at the buzzer to shut down a chance for New York to send it to overtime. And just a great back and forth kind of a game. Some big performances from multiple players on the Atlanta offense. Antoine Davis was just ripping them apart deep. This is a statement win. I mean, there's no way around it. This is a statement win. Atlanta, puts himself in the driver's seat to get the number 1 seed in the Atlantic Division. And I have to say, I've been very skeptical of this Atlanta team.
I'm with you.
I got to give them the credit here. They went out and they beat a close to full strength New York team.
And there was nothing fluky about either this victory or their win over DC. I mean, They looked like the real deal. And I was a little disappointed. I came on the podcast. I said I was a little disappointed with the play of Antoine Davis in the early part of the season. Felt like his addition had been a little overhyped. He has been scorching since then. I don't know if he took that and put it on the bulletin board. Actually, in reality, he probably doesn't even know I said that. But
I think it was that brutal game that they had against DC where he did not play very well.
I mean, that was the backbreaker. But he has just been electrifying over these past couple of weeks for them, and has that turnaround I think is a part of, but not the entirety of what we've seen from Atlanta that's helped them. Carl Eckwurzel has shown up and just been a force. I mean, I was watching the game and I was like, he's maybe the closest body type I can think of to Babbitt. Like, he's a smaller Babbitt, like just this kind of big shoulder, big chest body type. It is fairly unusual in men's competition in Ultimate. And then he goes out there and skies Babbitt. And it was, I mean, I've been watching Carl Eckwurzel since he was in college. He's always been a pretty impressive athlete. So more power to him. He was pretty pumped up about that catch, and rightfully so.
Well, and you saw John Stubbs playing defense for most of the night for Atlanta, which was an interesting change and worked really well. I mean, he gave them so much offense after the turnover. And this Atlanta defense, whether they're running the zone or they're running in matchup, they have been one of the better units in the league. And we just have to acknowledge that. I mean, the defense has been awesome. And that, you compare that with some of the other teams in the division. New York's defense, it's just okay. It's not that good. DC's defense has been really, really good after the turn, but hasn't necessarily been like a takeaway machine. They've had some good games and they've had some bad games. And Atlanta has really put it together on both sides. I'm not sure that I would take their offense over DC's or New York's, like in a neutral site situation. But I got to give credit to their D-line. I mean, they get it done week in and week out. And to get this win over a team that, really looked like the favorite at the start of the year and may still be if we get to the playoffs, but
that's
going to think twice about it now.
That's going to be the real question is, because this happens even during the club season. I mean, it happens in every sports season. A team is really successful during the regular season, but we haven't seen them prove it in the postseason. You get to the postseason, you start to ask, like, okay, is this team going to really deliver when it matters? We ask these questions across all sorts of sports. So I'm sure Atlanta has a chance to continue to kind of feel like the underdog when they get in that situation. But the performance this year has been very legit. If I'm gonna speak ill of someone's performance in that game, because it was a great game. I saw some folks on Twitter saying it's one of the best regular season games in AUDL history. Not the best performance for Ben Katz there. I think some clock mismanagement issues. Maybe that's not on him. Maybe that's on the coaching staff. I don't know, but not some great clock management on his part at the end of some of the quarters there, including the final play of the game.
Well, it's crazy what a turnaround it's been for, Atlanta gets the early win against Raleigh to start the season. And then it's like, okay, this team is like over talked, overheated. They're not that good. And then they get smacked by DC and everyone's like, there it is. And then since then they've been awesome. Wins over DC and New York. They're 3-1 against the playoff teams in the Atlantic at this point. And they're now in a great... I mean, it would be shocking, basically, at this point if they didn't have a home playoff game. They would have to lose to a team they shouldn't lose to or have some very strange math play out. But it's like pretty much theirs to lose. Even if they drop a game to Raleigh, I mean, they should play at home, and they will probably be either a pick-em or a slight favorite against whoever they play.
It's going to be exciting. It's been a year with plenty of surprises. So I don't see why coming down the stretch and into the postseason should be any different.
Well, it should be fun to see what happens. Big game out in the Central this week as Madison takes on Chicago in a game that if Chicago wins, they're going to pretty much lock up the 1 seed and they do clinch a playoff spot. Madison needs to win big to give themselves a chance because they'll be tied with Chicago and Minnesota, and then it'll go to point diff. So they need to pick up a bunch of points. And let's take it to our picks. These lines are now from DraftKings. They are not created by us. Chicago is -3 at Madison. That's our first game in Stall 7. By the way, we went 0 for 4 last week. Just disgusting.
Wow,
we're wearing the sombrero. What is it called in baseball?
Oh, I don't know.
I'm forgetting the name of it, but like if you go 0 for 4 with all strikeouts, you have to wear the golden sombrero or something like that. We went 0 for 4. We're still 1 pick ahead of Stall 7. We're 11 for 24 on the season. We got to pick it up, Keith.
Yeah, we're letting them back into the game. Yeah.
I don't really feel bad looking back at last week. We had New York. I mean, it was a coin flip game, and it felt like a coin flip game. Taking Toronto, I felt bad about that one immediately. We should have taken Ottawa +5.5.
You were worried about the line. Listen, our logic, it was sound for Ottawa.
It was sound.
They had been terrible.
They're a bad team. They have been a bad team.
And we've seen basically bad teams get blown out all year. Like that's been most of the trend. So
yep. San Diego losing to Dallas. I mean, I can't say that I really saw that one coming. It was also
and they got outplayed.
They did
by a Dallas team that felt shorthanded. So that was really disappointing from a pick standpoint because Dallas, they had every reason to beat Dallas with Dallas losing some key players during that one. So very disappointing loss for them.
Anyway, let's get on to this week's picks. We've got the 1 game lead over Stall 7. And first up is Chicago -3 at Madison. What's your first inclination, Keith?
I got to ride with the favorite on this one. It feels a little bit like Chicago's starting to find that stride that we've been waiting for them to find. I think that win last week, 4-goal win over Minnesota, is one of their best results of the year. they haven't exactly been the most consistent. We've seen them go they had a 3-goal win and a 3-goal loss to Madison. So I get why the line's right around 3. But I feel like I want to take the hot team here. It is a little concerning that the line, is not insignificant, just because I think that if Madison's good at making the game ugly, and so they could still lose this game, but have it be closer than 3. That's what gives me pause right there.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, Madison has a lot to play for too. They're going to be playing ultra aggressive, which could lead to them getting blown out badly. It's hard to get a read. I mean, Chicago's sending a really good team. They're going to have the full squad. I think they're going to win the game. The question is whether they're going to win it by 4. They went on the road and beat a better Minnesota team last week. I don't know. This
Chicago
is a tough one.
Also
this is a really very, very tight
high-scoring
line.
game since like week 5 or week 4 or something. There's not
Madison.
a lot of points.
The crowd in Madison is going to be crazy. I honestly want to take Madison in the points.
I think points here
because even if Chicago loses by 1 or 2 goals, it doesn't really matter. They're going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, let's rock with Madison then, and they're going to make this game ugly. They might not win, but they're going to make it ugly, and that just gives us extra value. I
mean, this is just like a massively important game for Madison. That's not. I mean, it's important for Chicago to get a win, but it's not like they're. I just don't know if I see the big blowout coming.
This is close.
If this
enough
game
to
was
me.
in Chicago, I would say yes, but I think the fact that it's in Madison, they're going to have stands are going to be packed. I'd rather take the points here with the home team.
This is close enough to me that I honestly wish we could just be like, we'll take whatever they didn't take.
All right, we're going to take Madison +3. Next game, San Jose at Austin, and the home team is a 2-point favorite. Austin, 2-point favorite.
I don't really see the reason to be. What's the case for San Jose here to be on San Jose?
Well, the Spiders did not show up very well last week. Am I wrong? I have to look. I think San Jose beat Austin earlier this season.
Let's take.
I'm checking right now. Austin lost by 5 to San Jose in San Jose. In San Jose. So there's your reason.
Yeah,
it's not often that you see a team lose by 5 and then show up as a 2-point favorite against that.
That's fair.
Team.
That's. But you also can see the fact that that's one of the Spiders' 2 wins this year, while the Soul are 5-5. I mean, I'm on the Soul here. They're at home. I think they've been the better team for the most of the year, almost exclusive, like outside of that San Jose game that they played.
San Jose, this is only their second road game of the season.
And they're still 2-4.
They lost I don't have any
game
in week team. 1 against Seattle. I don't either, especially after going, 0-2 in their last 2 home games, losing to Dallas and then losing to LA. That's the one that got me. And I'm pretty sure that was that LA on a back-to-back last weekend. I can't remember. But anyway, I agree with you. I think that Austin knows how important this game is. I think it's also tough. Like San Jose, they haven't been on the road since week 1.
And this is their longest road trip. This is the front end of a back-to-back with the Texas teams. So,
right.
It's not the same as quite being on the back end of a back-to-back, but they're getting some travel in. They know they got a game the next day.
I'm with you. I think we take Austin here.
Austin it is.
Okay.
Last game?
Yep. Philadelphia at DC. The Breeze -3.5 at home. I got to be honest, Keith. I smash DC here. I think that they win this game by 5 to 10 goals.
I have no disagreements with that. I am in the same boat. Philly, I think, was showing up pretty solidly in the beginning of the year. There was that one point where we were like, all right. I think they lost maybe a close game to Atlanta, and we were kind of like, all right, maybe this team is a little bit surprising. And nothing since then. They lost by 7 to the Empire. They edged Boston, lost to Atlanta by 5. That's their last 3 results. So, there have been plenty of instances of them breaking this line, getting beat by this much, right? They lost to the Flyers by 12 earlier this year. Yep. They lost to the Hustle by 7. So I don't have concerns that this is a team that keeps it really close all the time. So I'm with you on Breeze.
The only good result for them really this whole season is their win over Boston. But against the good teams, against the playoff teams, they've lost them all by 5+. I don't really understand this line, to be honest. I think it's an obvious pick to take DC here.
Are you doing a best bets column? Because this is probably on the list.
It may make it, and I am doing a best bets column. It will be out on Friday.
Ooh. Eyes
all right.
Emojis.
There it is. So we're taking Madison +3, Austin -2, DC -3.5, and those are our picks for this week. No Canada Cup games here in whatever week this is. I think it's week 10, 9?
We're in week 9, I believe.
We're in week 9. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's kind of a quiet weekend in the club division, but coming up, we have the U.S. Open. We are going to be streaming from the U.S. Open. Unfortunately, only the men's division this year, and then we also have YCC, which will be streaming on Monday. We'll have a semifinal and 2 of the finals coming your way. And so I hope you'll tune in for that. Of course, we'll preview the U.S. Open next week here on the show.
There is an event coming up that
go ahead.
Wildwood.
Wildwood. There's another thing. The Western Ultimate League is having a showcase game. Seattle Tempest playing Friday night against kind of a
Western All-Star
amalgamation of Western All-Stars. So that'll be fun, a little kind of appetizer for the event that we should see later this year with the Western Ultimate League and the teams coming together in the wintertime. So that will be live streamed as well. So look through the Western Ultimate League social media channels to check that out. And yes, Wildwood. Wow. I am not going, Keith. I want to go to one more Wildwood. I think that's where I'm at, but not this year.
I feel like I've passed the expiration date for going to Wildwood. I feel like it.
One more.
Maybe. Also, this is not the year that I want to be at Wildwood. I'm not going to lie to you.
That's fair. I could see it going either way. I could see it being a very fun year to go to Wildwood.
I'm not trying to guilt anybody, but just be safe, be responsible out there.
I don't think safe and responsible are words that are typically associated with Wildwood.
I know, that's the challenge. That is the challenge.
All right. Well,
survive Wildwood.
If you are going to Wildwood, have fun. If you're playing Ultimate this weekend, have fun. If not, enjoy and get ready for some streaming action from the U.S. Open coming your way in just over a week. Don't miss our subscriber bonus segment. This week we are going to lay out our AUDL All-Star ballots. So the Stall 7 guys have put together a form. We filled it out. We've got our picks, and we're going to take you through them in our sub bonus segment. You can become a subscriber for less than $4 a month at ultiworld.com/subscribe.
Happy NBA draft day for all you nerds out there like me. It's a big day.
Thanks so much for tuning in. For Keith Raynor, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long. We'll talk to you next week right here on Deep Look.